Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us at the last session for the day. We truly appreciate you staying with us, and we hope you're having a wonderful day so far, filled with exciting sessions and innovative ideas. My name is Varun, and I'm a product lead in AI Foundry. And I'm thrilled to kick off this session with Todd.
Hi, everyone. I'm Todd. I'm a principal software engineer for the Commercial Solution Areas CTO organization, working really closely with Varun and the AI Foundry team.
Today, we're going to cover solution patterns and AI templates. So let's assume our manager comes to us, and she says she wants us to build a shopper assistant AI agent in a week. The moment she says that, clock starts ticking. We need to move fast. We need to master new tools. We need to figure out what we're going to build and how we're going to build. But I've been a cautious developer. I cannot compromise on security. We really need to figure out how we're going to build the whole entire system. So I start kind of figuring it out what's going to be the right programming language, what's going to be the cost, what's going to be the right environment, what's going to be the database, what's going to be the API layers, how I'm going to build the design, what's going to be the architecture, and so forth. It's going to take a lot of time, and it's a long list. But it gives me confidence. And if you are new to the AI world, it definitely feels long list. So I'm guessing it's going to take more time than just a week. Right, Todd?
Well, Varun, what if I actually said this could take less time than a week? It could actually take just 10 minutes to do this.
10 minutes?
Yeah. So all I need is a pre-built solution, some existing code that I can actually use, and some documentation that describes how I could use it, how I could go about deploying it. And as long as I can deploy it, I can start using the app and customizing it.
Cool. Where can I find these pre-built solutions?
I can go to AI Foundry to do this. So I can find the right template to do this. I can actually clone the repository associated with that template, and then provision the resources, deploy it, and configure.
Cool. Can you show me how to do that?
Yeah. So let me share my screen. I'm going to jump over to AI Foundry. And so we're going to be on this project list, and I'm going to select my default project. And what we're going to see on this left side navigation is this templates page. So I'm going to click on templates, and it sounds like based on the use case that we've been talking about, we can use this getting started with AI agents template. So I'm going to click on this open in GitHub link. And this is going to take me right out to a GitHub README. And I'm going to scroll down, and I'm actually going to clone this repository to my local computer. So I'll scroll down to my deployment steps and copy this git clone command. And I'm actually going to go into VS Code on my local computer and paste this command into my terminal. And so what this is going to do is going to clone this down to my local computer, which super fast, right? So I'm just going to quick switch directories. And now I can actually jump back into the GitHub README and scroll down to log in so we can start deploying this. So let me copy this azd auth login command, and I'll jump back to VS Code in order to run this again. So drop that into my terminal. And what that's going to do is actually open up this new window, and I'm just going to log in with my administrator account where I can actually have access to the subscription so I can start deploying this. So I'll click my user, and I'll close that. And then now we're set. So I can actually copy some additional parameters to customize the deployment for ourselves. So I'll copy this parameter that actually sets the deployment capacity on my Azure OpenAI resource. So I'll jump back into VS Code, drop that in, and by default, what this parameter actually does is sets it to 100,000 tokens. But for today's purposes, just to make sure we can actually demo this today, we can set this to 200,000. There we go. And the first thing it's going to ask me now is, let's set a new environment name. So let's pick something unique because we're a big organization. We want to make sure that this is unique and doesn't actually intersect with other environments. So let's follow our best practices. So we'll pick something very, very unique. So we'll do shopper, we'll pick today's date, and add a few numbers. OK, so I've hit enter, and now what I can actually do is just start the deployment process. So all I have to do is type in azd up, and that'll get everything going, because this includes deployment scripts written in Bicep, and it already knows that I have access to this because I logged in, so I can select the subscription that I actually want to deploy this to. Hit enter, and now it's going to actually ask me which regions I want to deploy this to. So let's select US East, and there we go. So what I would typically do now is go get some coffee, because this takes about 4 minutes. I can take my dog for a walk, go have some fun, but since we're here, still having fun, do you maybe want to ask me some questions, Varun?
Yes, absolutely. I got some basic questions for you.
OK.
So you said it's deploying. So what kind of products and services this template is deploying?
Yeah, so let's actually jump back over to that GitHub page. So scrolling back up, what we also include on this GitHub repository is a detailed solution architecture. So we can actually see that this is built using AI Foundry. It deploys a project, includes some AI services, OpenAI, there's an agent service, and behind the scenes, we're also using log analytics and application insights to gather data so we can start to see how this application is being used. But from a web interface perspective, we're actually using a container app that there's an image deployed to it so we can actually start to interact with this agent through a chat interface that has additional configurations behind it in Azure as well.
Cool. Well, I noticed you used VS Code, but I'm comfortable building in mostly containers. So can I use one?
Yeah. So if you actually scroll down, we can go to this Getting Started section, and this outlines the different deployment mechanisms that we have. So if you're comfortable deploying in the cloud and developing there, you can use GitHub Codespaces, or if you want to pull locally, you can actually use a dev container as well to get all the dependencies set up so you don't have to worry about your environment set up. You just hit the ground running.
Well, the moment I'm going to share it with my enterprise architect, they're going to have a ton of questions about the cost for the component. So do you have some suggestions around that?
Oh, yeah. So we actually list out prereqs, and we actually go through how you can configure. But if we keep going, we actually list out how we can actually understand the pricing for this solution. So we go through product by product, all those dependencies that we outline within the solution architecture, list out the different tiers that they actually get configured and provisioned at, and then also include links to the pricing guides for each of the products that we use. And you can also use the Azure Pricing Calculator to understand how you could actually customize this and use it for your own organization.
Cool. Well, can you talk a bit more about security?
Yeah, so just below that, actually, we do list out some of the best practices that we're using in the solution. So this specific solution uses managed identities to actually access the configurations and the connection strings for the application. And we also list off, and include links to each of the product dependencies and how they're actually handling and suggesting best practices for products as well. So for example, we're using AI projects, AI services, storage accounts, app insights, and so all this is included so we can start to understand what we need to do to actually deploy this.
Cool. Well, you went over those commands pretty quickly. Can you show me those again, please?
Yeah. So what we include is also some troubleshooting. So say our deployment isn't successful, we do outline some of those commands to actually pull that down from our deployment because we don't want to keep it out there because that could incur some costs. But what we also include are these detailed deployment instructions that go through each of those steps that I started with, right? So we have this AZD auth to log in. We can set some additional parameters. Let's say we actually want to pull this down. We reference that. Or if we want to check up on how the Azure deployment is being running, we actually run some additional commands as well. So this goes in pretty in depth into how the solution can be deployed. And then we do also include various other mechanisms, like we talked about GitHub Codespaces, so how you go about setting that up. And you can use VS Code dev containers, what you need to do to get that going. And then I'm using local environment, so we have some more steps on that as well.
Cool.
Yeah, so let's actually jump back to VS Code to see how that deployment's going. So it looks like it's still running. So what I can actually do is dive into a little bit of the code to see how this is working and what we actually have within the solution. So we have this source folder that actually includes some information about our Docker file to get this dev container set up locally. And we do also segment out the code for an API for our backend layer. And this is written in Python. So we include the different templates and how this is actually working from a main app perspective, and how our search index and how all the different dependencies could be integrated into this. And then we do also include a front-end solution as well that we're going to be able to see once this is completed deploying, where we're going to be able to chat and use the agent directly within the solution. But you can't just use the solution as is. You got to have some data in there to understand how you can start using this for your own organization. So what we can actually do is open up this files folder. And this is actually some sample data that gets deployed in the solution during that command that's been running. And it actually looks like it just finished. So you maybe want to see how those files look in it so we can start chatting with it.
Absolutely.
Cool. So in our command line, we can actually copy this URL, open up our browser, and then drop this in. So what we're going to see here is this interface that was deployed, just a few simple clicks, a few simple prompts that we want to drop in, and within a few minutes we have a working application, right? So since this is the first time running this, I should say hi, make sure it's woken up, right? Make sure it's working. So it's already responded, which is great. So let's actually assume that I have a camping trip coming up, because I definitely look like I camp, right, Vern? So I'm going to actually ask it to list out some products that are related to camping. So please suggest some products for my upcoming camping trip. And then I also want to include some product citations. And what this is going to do is actually use that sample data that we saw within our solution, and it's actually going to ground based on that. So it already handled all of that vectorization and loading all of it into our index so we can actually start using and chatting with it. So it looks like we have some camping, cooking utensils, we have some information on gear, et cetera, right? So what we can actually do is ask some additional follow-up questions as well. So let's say, I'm actually interested in some eco-friendly products. Include our product citations. So that's actually going to look at that same sample data, but then now filter to different facets on that information, and we're going to be able to see some different responses come in. So we have some reusable water bottles, some biodegradable cookware, so really relevant to what I actually just asked it, right? Mm-hmm. So let's now actually say, I want to filter and find the most user-rated top stove, for example, because I like food, right? So I want to make sure that when I'm camping, I can actually get some really good food out there within my budget, right? But I want to make sure it's a good camping stove. So let's suggest camping stoves with best user ratings. And all of this data is included within our sample data, so that's how we're actually able to filter based on all these different prompts that it's actually going to use to help find the most relevant products. So now it found those stoves, and these are all based on the highest ratings, which we're able to understand based on the responses.
Cool. Well, that was quick. But I noticed this template comes with sample data of our camping products. Mm-hmm. But we don't sell camping products. We sell shoes. So how can I customize it to use my own data? And is it going to take a lot of time?
No, it's actually really easy to do that. We can do it really simply by going to AI Foundry. So let me take a note of what the URL is, because this is going to be a reference to the environment that I'm going to use. So ODIKX. So I'm actually going to jump into AI Foundry and then actually open up that project. So I'm going to view all of my resources. I'm going to find that in our name. So it looks like it's going to be this one. And this is going to open up the AI Foundry project for us. So this is what was deployed through all of that command line, which it's a very complex deployment process that we've simplified using AZD, right? Okay. So what I can actually go to is this agents page on this left-hand navigation. And this solution deploys a single agent. That's the main focus of this. And that's what we're actually chatting with in that chat interface. Mm-hmm. So this is where we're going to go to actually modify the data that it's using. So off the bat, I can click on it. I can see a unique agent ID. There's a friendly agent name, what deployment model it's using. So this one's using GPT-4o Mini. There's some instructions that we can modify, which would be your system or meta prompt. So we could give it some additional guidance if we wanted to control specifically what we want this assistant and agent to do. But what we mostly want to look at right now, based on your question, is this knowledge base that it's using. So this is where we actually keep our knowledge store for this. So we can actually modify, and you can already see that there's some files in here from that initial deployment that we saw within VS Code. And so I can actually just select some local files that I already have on my computer. Because we're a shoe company, I'm going to load in all the shoe data, right? Mm-hmm. So open that up, and you can see that it hasn't started yet, but by clicking Update, it's actually going to upload these to the service. It's pushing it through a pipeline that's included, so it's vectorizing everything, and then it's making it so our agent can actually use it, just like that. I don't have to make any code changes. Then I can actually come back to that same page without doing anything else and ask it a follow-up question. So let's assume I walk into work for my commute. So let's actually ask it to find some sneakers based, for me to commute in, right? So please suggest sneakers for my commute. And now it's returned our products.
Voila.
Just like that.
Cool. Well, nice. Can I share this app with my few other team members?
Yeah.
So that they can play around?
Yeah, it's super easy to do that. So because this is a web-based application, we can actually just share this URL with our team members. But before we do that, we actually want to apply some security to it. We don't want anyone just grabbing this URL and just getting to it before it's live. And especially if we're going to be bringing customers into using this shopper assistant, we want to make sure that it's tailored to them so they can log in, it can be customized, et cetera. So in order to do that, we can actually go out to the Azure portal. And because we deployed this out to Azure and we're using a container app, we can actually open up our container app within our resource group that was created, and we can actually just apply an identity provider to it. So let me open up my resource groups. And if you remember, when I was entering all the deployment instructions, I entered a unique environment name. So that's going to be the name of our resource group that was created here. So I'm going to click on that. And you can see each of the individual resources that we went over within our solution architecture has been deployed here and configured, and it's already up and running, right, because we're using the application. So I'm going to click on this container app, and all that I have to do, super easy, I promise, is on this left-hand nav, open up the security tab and click on authentication. And this is already built into container apps. It's one of the big features that we can actually take advantage of by just adding an identity provider. And there's a number of out-of-the-box identity providers that are included. So we're going to use Microsoft for this one, but you could go ahead and use some third-party ones for like social logins, et cetera. So let's select Microsoft, and then all we're going to do is select our 90-day client expiration, because what this is going to do behind the scenes after I add this is create our app registration. It's going to configure everything for our identity provider and connections to the container app. So now I can just share this URL with the rest of the team. They can log in.
Cool. Well, before I share, since this is a consumer-facing app, I'm sure my security team is going to ask, how are we protecting our users from seeing inappropriate content? So how can we control that?
Yeah, so there's actually some nice features that are part of AI Foundry for that. So we can actually enable some content filters across our model to actually handle both input and output filters for what we're actually using within the application. So I already have my project open, and I'm actually on this left side. I'm going to scroll down to our guardrails and controls page. And what we're going to be able to actually click on is this tab at the top called Content Filters that lets us create a new filter. And out of box, it doesn't create one by default. So it's super easy to add one. So we can just create a new filter. We can name it, hit next. And what this is actually going to allow us to configure separately is both input filters. So as users are typing things into that chat application, those responses are sent to our model, and it's going to filter those based on these different parameters that we are going to be able to configure. So there's different parameters and categories that we can configure for that. So you can control down to the level of we want to block some of it, or even all of it, depending on whatever business requirements we might have and what we're trying to do. But something specifically we want to call out here is that a lot of times, especially with LLM applications, users can try to jailbreak it. So it could be hackers, it could be nefarious users, and this is where you'd actually set and filter out that content based on various mechanisms behind the scenes that we're actually applying for the users without having to do any coding, right? So I can hit next, and we'll keep that in place. And then there's also an output filters section that allows us to actually take what was generated by our LLM and filter that, what's going to get presented to the user. And because these LLMs are non-deterministic, we cannot always control what they're going to create and output. So we have that same level of control based on what the content is for what the users initially inputted, trying to get additional information out, right? So same idea. So we'll keep those as is, hit next, and then we just apply it to our model, hit next. So everything looks good. And there we go. Our filter's been created. That's all I have to do. No additional coding.
Cool. Well, it seems like it took care of most of the things that I usually need to think through before I start building. So if I recollect, what you did was you found a template, you ran some commands, and you customized it for my own data, all within a few minutes, right?
Yeah, I just went to AI Foundry, found that template and cloned it, and then I authenticated and logged in, deployed it, and started customizing. That easy.
Cool. Well, seems like it worked very well for the simple scenarios. What about the advanced scenarios using multiple agents? I do have a marketing team really wants to create some marketing campaign using multi-agents and AI. Can you help with that? And do you have a solution for that?
Yeah, we have a solution for that. Super easy.
Can I see that?
Yeah, so let's actually go back out to AI Foundry. So let me share my screen again. So I'll bring us back to that main project listing page. So if I go out to my default project that I've created and click on this templates page again, and instead of actually looking at this getting started with AI agents, which is a single agent solution, it sounds like if we're creating a complex marketing campaign, there's lots of tasks that we need to go through. This is a great job for a multi-agent workflow. So let's open up this solution in GitHub. And this will take us out to another README. But on this solution, we can see that this is a different architecture. It's a very different type of approach that we want to take with this to solve those complex problems and tasks for us. So what this is, it uses Azure Azure AI Foundry, using the GPT-4o model, and we're using that both from like an orchestration perspective, but then for each individual agent. And this is actually a container app as well, where we are creating this web interface, still going to be chatting, but it's going to be a different type of experience. And so what we can actually see here is what this experience is going to look like. So you can see this chatting experience that we saw from the last one, but there are some additional UI elements that come with this. But I don't know what those do. So let's actually dig deeper into this README. But it looks like if I want to be able to customize this, there's going to be some documentation, which will be great. I'm just going to go over the different dependencies that we're going to have in here. So if I want to learn about Foundry or container apps, we're going to link off to that documentation. So it'll help me get familiar with this solution. And I'm going to review these key features. So it looks like this is actually the perfect solution for us because I want to do this task automation to create our marketing campaign for us. So great. Let's actually deploy this, right? So this is a demo today. I've already deployed it for us. Super easy, right? We probably don't want to see that again. So let me actually open up that deployed application. So it looks very different, but typical type of experience. We're going to be chatting with it. But what we actually see on this left side are the different tasks that we can have these agents execute for us. And this is just the history of like what's actually been executed. But if I don't actually know what I want to start with, I can actually look at these quick tasks below. And strangely, there's a marketing campaign that we can use for this. So I'm going to click on that and then run that. And so what it's actually doing behind the scenes is taking that prompt that I asked it for and it's breaking it down into a plan. So it's taking that and creating this detailed task list and associating it with different agents that are already available within the system to create this plan of how it's going to actually execute on that and then run it for us. And because this is quite complex, we do want to make sure that humans are kept in the loop of this. So we are going to go step by step and actually run each of them because there's also different pieces of data that it might need from us. We want to make sure it's actually using the right source systems for it as well. So looks like that was created successfully, and we actually go view the details of what this plan was. So we can see that there's different stages or steps that we're able to actually use this multi-agent scenario to create this campaign for us. So first, it's going to retrieve some product information. It's going to then go create our marketing campaign. Then it's going to create some additional design materials for us. And then we can actually go and order these automatically from our procurement system. So before I do that, though, I actually have to enter some additional information because it knows that it doesn't have all of that and we don't want it to guess. So that's another step of being able to orchestrate against all of these agents. So let's assume that our audience is going to be professionals aged 20 to 30. And then we want to make sure that our marketing budget is $50,000. So I'm going to enter that, and it's actually going to use that as a context into the rest of the steps going forward. And step by step, it's not going to do them necessarily sequentially, but it can actually use information from different agents to help each other, right? And that's like one of the big benefits of a multi-agent solution. So it knows that it's captured that, so I can actually go and retrieve these products, and this is hooked up to our product database. So it's going to use that audience that we've actually told it that we want to create this campaign for, to filter those products, pick the right ones, and especially fitting that within our budget because we don't necessarily want to use these super high-end products if it's going to blow our marketing budget, right? So that's been running. It got these products from our database. So this is one agent that went and got that information. So this looks great. I want to make sure that I review this. And then let's actually have it go create our marketing campaign for us. So if we're going through a marketing campaign, there's a lot of different things we need to think about. What are the different channels that we want to create these campaigns for and deploy them through? Do we need to maybe create some copy? Do we then need to go create designs for each individual copy? I don't know. I'm not a marketer, right? So it looks like it actually created some assets automatically. So it looks like it's going to create some social media posts. It's recommended some email templates, blogs, some ad copy. We're going to go create a landing page, et cetera. And it already has identified what different formats we're going to have to create these in because it has all the information to ground against this, right? And it's already created these social media posts for us. So these look great. I'm actually going to go and start creating some creative for this. And I actually also want to use these in a product brochure that we're going to publish now too. So let's actually move on to the next step and start designing some promotional materials using all this information that it created the campaign for. So this is running. It's going to create the different designs for us behind the scenes. So you could customize it to create an image. It could be like a multi-page document, et cetera. And so it looks like that finished up. Great. We have a product lineup launch campaign for our Soulmate shoes because we're a shoe company. Right? And so now we can actually send these off to our printer. So this last step is actually an agent specifically meant to submit this to our procurement system to send off to our printer to get everything printed. So that's running. And then once it returns, it's going to give us a confirmation with some additional context that we got back from our system. So it looks like we were able to order our promotional materials. We're going to have one of that item ordered.
Wow, that was cool. That's cool. But I do have a few questions for you.
OK.
Where can we see these agents, what you created, and what do they do?
OK. So we're actually going to have to go to AI Foundry, and we actually see all the details of all the agents, right? So I'm in my project. Let's go to our project list. Then I'm going to open up my multi-agent project.
Okay.
And so on the left side, I'm going to select this agents page again. So you'll remember from the first demo that we were looking at, we saw a single agent because it's a single agent solution. And this is a multi-agent solution. So these are all the various agents that I have available to me to in order to respond to my initial prompt, which was create a marketing campaign. So all those steps that we saw, it's going to pick and choose and plan against all of these to be able to decide what's the right order and what should I be doing and which agent should I be using to do that, right? So if I click on this group chat manager, this is actually our orchestration agent. So this is going to handle all of our requests coming in and then route them to the right things. And the first thing that we want to make sure that we're doing, though, is creating a detailed plan of how to actually respond and create that marketing campaign for us. So that's what our planner agent is accomplishing for us. And after we created that plan and we saw those steps show up, this is where it knew that it needed to ask us what is the audience that we're actually targeting and what's the budget. So our human agent actually captures that information and then stores that for the rest of the agents to use. And then from there, we're able to actually go and use that same information with our product agent, which is hooked up to our product database, and they can query based on that information to return our products, which is then used with our marketing agent, which is designed, you can see from some of these instructions, to create those campaigns based on the information that was passed from those products, right? So you're starting to see how these are stitching together in order to create this bigger plan and execute across our broader goal, right? And then from there, we can use our generic agent to create our design files, and then our procurement agent to go and purchase what it had identified it needed to create.
Cool. Well, how are these agents working together?
So we're actually using semantic kernel. So that's helping from an orchestration and an implementation perspective for each individual agent. And we're also using the agent SDK and AI service as well.
Gotcha. One more question. I mean, whenever it comes to the multi-agent, cost is always a concern. So do you have suggestions around that?
Yeah. So there's a few different things that we actually want to consider when you're thinking about agents and LLMs. So first off the bat, we want to make sure that as we're using models for these solutions, we're understanding how they're working and how they're getting used. So let's actually jump over to this models and endpoints page, and we'll be able to see that for this specific solution, we're using the GPT-4o model. And if we click on that, we can actually go look at the metrics specific to how this model is getting used. And we'll be able to understand how many requests are coming in, what's the total number of tokens, what's the prompt token counts that are getting used for everything. And you can see how these are getting used over time. And these are going to be very good metrics to consider as you're thinking about scalability and how many potential agents you might want to use and the cost implications that come with those. Because this is going to give you an understanding of how it gets used, but then you can go out to the Azure portal, which I'll go to right now, to actually go see a detailed cost metrics for the resource group that was created during our deployment. So I'll open up my multi-agent solution, and you can see all the different resources that were deployed for this. But then on the left-hand nav, we can open up cost management and go to cost analysis. And this is going to give you that detailed view for every single resource that was deployed, including all of the Foundry resources for the specific resource group. So you can do a detailed analysis and then work with your IT team to actually figure out what's the best strategy for how you scale this up and out, and then also consider how storage is used for this, because the more files and more agents and more actions that they're actually using and the integrations with other services, that's going to increase and potentially impact your cost, right? Which isn't a bad thing because there's lots of efficiencies that come with that. And then finally, if we go back to our GitHub repository, and we do list out all those costs, documentation per product dependency that's included within this. And we also, though, include a sample pricing sheet within the Azure Calculator as well for this. So if I open that up, what this is actually going to do is actually show me, based on that architecture that we looked at the very beginning of this solution, a breakdown of per resource what the SKU level is that it has been provisioned at. So that if you're planning to make some changes based on usage that you saw from how many requests are coming in, you could actually go in and configure that to see for your POC that you may deploy, what that would be from a cost implication perspective, then start planning for a production rollout as well.
Cool. Well, seems like these templates works really well for these two scenarios. But there are a few stakeholders who are breathing down my neck, and they really want to use AI to knock out these quick POCs. So do you have some more templates for that?
Oh, yeah. We have a ton of templates. So do you maybe want to run me through the use cases that you're thinking about?
Sure. Let me start with the fundamental. Most of the projects start with processing data. So do you have any solution for processing unstructured data?
Yeah. So we actually have a content processing workflow that actually accepts multimodal data. So it can take forms, it could be photos of documents, it could be text files, and it takes those and then it extracts the information using the Azure AI Content Understanding Service and Azure OpenAI, and then maps it to a structured specific schema. So imagine you're an insurance company and you actually have customers that are uploading invoices for, maybe it's a fire or maybe it's a car accident or something. And you want to be able to get those into a database, CRM, ERP, whatever your source system is where you're getting these files for your customers, and it has to be in that specific format. So this is an API-driven solution that's going to process all of your documents so then you can actually use them in your enterprise data solutions.
Cool. Well, let me throw you a curveball here. How about an enterprise-level feature so that we can move quickly and scale our AI app to production for all our user base?
Yeah, we have a template for that too.
OK.
So this actually focuses mostly on a production-level deployment perspective, where it's handling security, handling encryption. It's following the Azure well-architected framework. So there's things like Azure landing zones that it's going to actually implement, and best practices for how you're going to deploy a production-ready AI application for your enterprise solution, right?
Cool. Last one, I promise. How about generating content? Let's say contract proposal.
Yeah, so there's actually a document generation workflow solution as well. So what this focuses on is, imagine you want to create a statement of work or a contract, and you don't know where to begin to create a complex document like that, but your organization already has a lot of documents. So there's a lot of research you need to do. You need to comb through a lot of documents. But what this actually does is it lets you chat with these documents and actually ask questions to generate a template, and then use that same information to generate responses for you, and then just chat with it to keep iterating over it. So it creates this document workflow where you can generate content really quickly.
Well, this is great. I mean, this looks all simple and easy. So what's the catch?
Catch? There's no catch. No. So we spent a lot of time, researching this and iterating and building, and we really focused on building these solutions that let you focus on building on top of and customizing these, so you don't have to start from scratch and think from ground zero, right?
Cool. So how do you come up with these templates, and how do you prioritize those?
Yeah, so we actually went through 1,500 plus customer conversations to figure out different signals based on where customers are most interested in for their use cases, for their organizations. And we're also parsing through how customers are potentially getting stuck on things, and maybe where they're struggling for these solutions, really focusing on how we can help them really, again, focus on building instead of starting from scratch, in order to really just push forward with deploying an AI application as quickly as possible, hopefully within a few minutes. And then there's even teams within Microsoft, working very closely with customers that are going through these deployments. And there's hundreds and hundreds of use cases that we can think about across these AI-driven solutions that we're actually creating these patterns of across the signal to help inform these solutions that we're actually creating to help with this.
Cool. So how many templates are there?
We're actually launching 10 today. So it's not just 10, there's actually hundreds of use cases. Yep, really exciting. So hundreds of use cases for all of these, right? So this is meant to be customized, meant to be extended for different workloads and solutions. And we really just want to make sure that we're helping customers get there as quickly as possible, being able to build these AI applications, right?
I'm definitely going to try these, and I'm hoping my manager would be happy, since I'm not going to take a whole week to build an AI app.
Yeah.
Thank you, Todd.
Yeah. So if there's 5 things that you walk away with today, please remember, go to AI Foundry, check out the templates. So take a picture, scan the QR code, go to the URL below. And once you get there, you can actually look for different templates for your use cases, clone those repos associated with the templates. You can then authenticate, log in, get access to your subscription and tenant, start deploying away, obviously thinking about pricing, right? And then you can customize on top of it, bring your own data, integrate it into your applications, and start using it.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Todd. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed learning about AI templates today, and going to give it a try. And here are some of the takeaway links for you. And if you are staying up with us for next few days, please do come talk to us in Expert Meetup area. Thank you.